My name is Autumn White, and I first started attending North Road about 6.5 years ago. My first time coming, I was so scared of just being judged, and I'd put these labels on myself that I was unworthy, and I was ashamed of who I was. I grew up in an abusive situation, which as I turned older, it turned into a sexual abuse. All throughout my life, I always looked for approval, looked for people to validate who I was as a person. When I first came to North Road, it was completely different than what I expected. Whenever I walked in the doors, everyone was just so genuinely happy. And from the stage, Matt was talking about his struggles and being transparent, which I just never imagined a pastor actually doing that from the stage. And so it quickly became our home. Within a couple months of us going, my husband, my now husband, which was my boyfriend at the time, we had a daughter, and we were feeling convicted about our relationship and living together. And so we decided to get married. And throughout that, we decided to live a godly life before that marriage. Whenever we finally got married, we were still, at the time, we were still doing drugs and we were still partying. But God, within 2 months of us getting married, God just, He told us that was enough, and He wanted us to surrender our lives down even more. And so we gave up drugs and we started going to Celebrate Recovery. And that was a huge step. Us getting connected and to Celebrate Recovery caused us to want to go into leadership. It called us into being the worship leaders at Celebrate Recovery for a couple of years. It was like my first step of God calling us into something more and to hopefully make a difference in other people's lives through our stories. And so we met with Matt, and in that meeting with Matt, he offered me a part-time temporary position working in the children's ministry, which was crazy to me because I loved kids, but the thought of working with kids like that, I didn't feel like I was worthy enough. I felt like the kids deserved a lot better than me. I felt like the church deserved someone a lot better than me. But God called me, and so He called me into ministry, and He called me into doing that. And the crazy part about it is I left that meeting with Matt, and I told my husband, I was like, there's no way. Like, I couldn't do that. There's no way I could step up into that role. Within the 2 weeks until I ended up talking to Matt, my answer from no turned into an answer of yes. And I came on just to fill in a role. And within 2 months of me filling that role as the administrative children's director at the time, he just showed me that that's what I was meant to be doing. Working in ministry, my first year and a half, I would say, I still had to battle that unworthiness and being ashamed of the choices that I had made before coming to North Road and before pursuing this relationship with God. And about 3 or 4 months ago, I finally broke down to Matt and told him that I don't think I'm worthy enough for this. And he asked me a question that day that I don't think I'll ever forget, and something that I think we as people need to ask this question whenever we're feeling those doubts. He asked me, who called you unworthy? Who told you that you weren't good enough? And it's like all the pieces fit together. I finally recognized that the trauma of my life, of being abused and being sexually abused, caused me to make a lot of choices that I didn't even realize that I was making. And through that, it caused me to view God in this way that I was supposed to do this checklist of praying every single day, all day long and reading my Bible every day. And if I couldn't do my checklist every day, then I wasn't good enough and I wasn't growing close enough to God. But in the past couple months, even, God has just shown me that that's not what He wants from me. He just wants me exactly who I am. He wants me to come and just surrender to Him and recognize that I'm loved and that it's not about my past. It's about what His purpose for my life is in the future. Whenever we first came, I was so afraid and so worried. I had put all these labels on myself that I was unworthy, and I was so ashamed of my choices that I had made before coming to North Road. And so, crap, I forgot where I was going with that.
Okay, it is recording. I didn't see the red light on this one.
Oh.
I thought that I hadn't hit record, but we're good on both. Go ahead and start from the top.
Yeah. I'm always like, how is it gonna start off and am I supposed to be smiling?
Here, or would you rather just
No.
move the chair and?
I feel like this is fine.
Okay.
My name is Autumn White, and I've been attending North Road for about 6.5 years now. I still remember my first time coming to North Road. I was so afraid. I felt so unworthy of love at the time, and I'd labeled myself. I'd put all these labels on who I was. I was ashamed of my choices that I had made, and all of these things. I just carried so much guilt from my past. And that Sunday morning that we came, whenever we walked in, the people that were sitting there, they all just seemed so genuinely happy. It didn't seem like anyone was faking this happiness. And Matt got up on stage and talked about his struggles and was transparent about who he was and the things that he was going through. And that was just, at the time, it's exactly what we needed to hear, because I never thought that a pastor could have struggles. I never thought that people in leadership could be going through these hard times and dealing with these burdens and this baggage that they're carrying. And so very quickly, North Road became our home, and we fell in love with the people. We fell in love with God for the first time in our lives. We recognized what it was like to actually have a relationship with Christ. And within a couple months of coming, my husband and I, we were feeling extremely convicted. We had a daughter outside of marriage. We were living together and making choices, doing drugs, partying, making these choices that I was carrying so much guilt for and so much shame with. And so we decided that we were going to get married, and we decided that we weren't going to live in that sin until we decided to build this foundation of a godly marriage for our daughter and for our future. About 2 months after we got married and we were still doing drugs, God called us to lay that down. And it was such a scary time because we didn't know how we were ever going to be able to quit that. We were addicted, but God called us to it, and we knew that that's what we had to do. And so we quit doing drugs. And we very quickly got involved in CR, which is Celebrate Recovery. And so we started going to Celebrate Recovery, and we're talking about our struggles and talking about this baggage that we were carrying, and God called us into leadership. He called us to become the worship leaders at Celebrate Recovery, and we did that for about 2 years. And through that time, God just continued to grow us and continued to call us deeper and to call us more. And He just always wanted more. And so after that 2 years of leading worship, I knew I needed to come into leadership, a higher leadership role. And I just knew that God wanted more from me. And so we met with Matt, and he ended up offering me a part-time position as the children's director. And I left that meeting and I thought, there is no way. I love kids, but I didn't think that I was good enough. Based on my past and based on the things that I had gone through, I thought I was too messy and too broken to be able to love kids and be able to care for them the way that they deserve to be cared for. And so my answer was no. I was going to tell him no. And for some reason, Matt and I weren't able to connect and be able to talk. And so within that time frame of me wanting to say no, and until we finally talked again, God turned that no into a yes. He told me that I was called, that I was worthy of doing this. And so I said yes, a very scary yes, but I said yes. And so I started working as the children's director, and it's been hard at times, but it's also been so much fun. And through the struggles of working in ministry, I've realized that I was still ashamed and still guilty and carrying the guilt of my past. And so one time I finally broke down in front of Matt and told him that I'm unworthy of this position. You could find someone so much better than me, that I'm not creative. I'm not any of the things that the ministry needs. And Matt just looked at me and he asked me a question that I don't think I'll ever forget. He asked me, who called you unworthy? Who said that you're not good enough for this job? And it was like God just clicked all the pieces in my mind. I realized that whenever I was little and whenever I was abused and I was sexually abused, I had built up this trauma, and I had always, all throughout my life, looked for the approval of other people, looked for love from others in unhealthy ways. And so I started going to counseling. God led me to counseling, which has helped me see that I was viewing God in that same way. I was viewing that I had to complete this never-ending perfect checklist in order to go to God. And that's not true at all. God wants us exactly where we are, exactly who we are. And He doesn't want us to be someone we're not. He wants us to be who we are, because He has a purpose for each of us. And if we're trying to be someone that we're not, we can't fulfill that purpose that He calls from us. And so through counseling and through God working within that, I'm starting to see now that I get to be exactly who I am, and that God has such a greater purpose in my life. And I've seen that through every time God has called us deeper and called us away from certain things in our lives. He's shown us over and over again that He wants us exactly as we are. And I don't know where to go after that.
Trying to think of where to transition next.
I know.
I think that this is a good wrap-up point, so I think,
Yeah.
that He wants you just as you are. I think that's a decent ending by itself, but
Yeah.
I think He could come back in and say something along the lines of, kind of the closing that I said earlier. It's just amazing to look back and see all the things that we've been through and where we are now. Like, I think you can kind of summarize.
Yeah.
So just say, it's just really crazy to think about where we've been to where we are now, that we were addicted to drugs, living together, and now I'm working for North Road Church in a children's ministry position.
Yeah.
And just kind of go through that and just say it's amazing to see what God has done.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So just a little 20-second recap, and I think we're good.
Yeah. It's just crazy. He wanted us exactly as we were, and looking back on everything that I've gone through in the past 6.5 years at North Road, we started off as these people that were partying all the time, doing drugs, living in an ungodly marriage, and now He brought me into leadership. He brought me into working at a church, which I never would have imagined a position like this for myself. I never would have imagined that God would want this from me. And I can't imagine what the future holds for myself and for my husband and our family. And I just, crap.
You're good. I can make cuts.
Okay.
I'm gonna have you do this ending part one more time anyway, because I think you said ungodly marriage.
Yeah.
Instead of like.
Ungodly
or dating
relationship, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll have you do this ending part one more time.
Yeah, I'll just
anyway.
start from there.
Cool.
God wanted us just exactly as we were. He wasn't expecting us to be someone that we weren't. He wanted us just as we were. And looking back on those last 6.5 years that we've been at North Road, I mean, we came in just completely broken people. We were partying all the time. We were doing drugs. We had this ungodly relationship that we were living in. And through every call that God has asked of us and asked us to step into, it's just been crazy, like to see what God has done and to see what He has continued to do in our lives. Whenever I came out of whenever I came into North Road and I was doing leadership, I thought, okay, this is it. But now He has me in children's ministry, and He has me with this passion in children's ministry that I never would have imagined. He gives me this desire to just love on the kids that come in every Sunday morning. And He gives me this desire just to care for them. And I never would have imagined something like that. And so just whenever I look back, I look back and thank God and think like, look what you've done with my life, and look at what you're going to continue to do with my life and my family's lives.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I think we're good.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Cool. Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Appreciate
no
you
problem.
driving down here.
No, it's no problem at all. I probably wouldn't have been able to get anything done at Moscow.
Yeah, I was just worried with the noise.
No,
That
definitely,
would've
it's been
been
crazy.
brutal.